So, anyways, uh, the bottom line is this is part two. The maintenance argument is an argument that requires that you only venerate and respect what it is that men create or what it is meant to maintain the system that we are currently a part of, and yet to ignore the danger that came about as a result of their creations and their discoveries, as well, and also how they handled the responsibility of those discoveries and the application of them. In other words, the application of the knowledge they had gained from the scientists and the physicists who had made those things. And in addition to that, the fact that the system itself, the way that it's constructed, and how that system is leading towards self-annihilation for the human race, that they had enabled that, they had constructed that system, they had enabled it, they had developed it, they are continuing it, even though every serious scientist is telling them that they need to completely transition to a different system, that they need to stop using fossil fuels. Now, when a lot of the men, when their attitude is dismissal, accusing the other side of lying, minimizing the problem, denying things altogether, refusal to acknowledge it, when these are the standard responses from these so-called male leaders on this issue, you're going to engender a response that you don't like, which is the Gynarchists. We are literally a reactionary force in a way. We came about and we are continuing to grow as a result of the irresponsibility of collective male leadership and the individuals who are enabling those males. It's these two groups that we have the biggest beef with and the problem with, because they are leading us to a place we can't return from. So this whole like maintenance argument thing is not as convincing as it is. It's just leaving shit out on an application. It's like saying, look at all the great things I'm doing. Forget about the fact that by supporting and enabling this system, you're pumping that shit up into the air. You're going to make the planet warmer. You're going to create more weather disasters. You're going to get more people killed. Eventually, you're going to get your entire race killed. But yeah, sure. I guess it's good to have temporary AC. I've heard that argument too. I wasn't swayed then either. So yeah, the whole maintenance argument thing is bullshit. Yeah, anybody, if you train somebody hard enough, pretty much anyone can maintain a system. The problem is the system itself worth maintaining? Is that advantageous to humans? And don't we have a responsibility to continue our legacy? Well, apparently, no, I guess not. Despite all their rhetoric, despite everything that they say, they don't want to give it up. So, if the men are going to do it, then what other choice do we have except to look to the other sex? Because if one of them is disproportionately responsible for these problems, and the other sex is representing more of the climate activists, is representing a different kind of approach to aggression, well, we only have two sexes from which to choose. We can't just invent a somehow better third sex that transcends all of the weaknesses and flaws of either. We have to choose the best people that we think will get the job done, or at least will slow down our annihilation. And it's not going to be the men. They seem to be taking us head first off a cliff. So that explains why the Gynarchy movement has been gaining traction in recent years. And of course, we have pretty interesting, silly arguments that people have made that are not based on statistics, they're not based on actual facts regarding women leaders in the 21st century. They're all based on either conjecture or deliberate data cherry picking. In other words, picking a sample size that's too small, or taking people or trying to use a sample size based on people who did not even exist in the same culture, which makes it even more disturbing. Like there's a lot of underhanded methods and tactics that are used to try to make it seem like, oh, they're both just as bad. No. That's factually incorrect on so many levels. Uh, and what is it? FLRs. What is up with the female-led relationships going on? I believe that what's been happening with FLRs and why people are so attracted to them is because, and I know this is going to sound weird, but I think that technology has made people more socially isolated, and so human beings are developing, are coming into the world with especially as adults, with underdeveloped social skills. So what I mean by that is they're not like they didn't have as much in-person interaction. They don't have as much they're not engaging as much conversation with people. And my personal opinion is that what this will lead to is problems with communication, problems with relationships. And so, what the appeal of an FLR is that there's, you know, one person giving out the orders or leading, and the other person is following. There is kind of an appeal to that because when you're in a relationship where there's a lot of give and take, there's a lot of like switching between you're the leader, I'm the leader. That requires excellent communication to sort of exchange to exchange those roles and those dynamics in an evolving relationship. And that can be pretty complicated for people who don't have a lot of relationship experience because misunderstandings are a common thing, miscommunications are a common thing. People can run away with impressions that aren't entirely accurate. These are just standard everyday experiences that happen in relationships. Now, FLRs, because of the fact that the woman may want input or may not want input, but either way, it's what the woman wants. This actually makes communication less complicated. In other words, the communication that exists between a dominant woman and a submissive man, or between just a dominant woman and whoever the submissive happens to be, this involves less complicated communication. It's as simple as the woman says, "This is what I want, Nate. I wait, blah 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 blah. I need you to do this," and then the person does it. Um, and I do think that the fact that it is a less that there's less complicated communication taking place between these two individuals, I think that's a bonus. I think that people are attracted to that simply because they just don't have the skills that our grandparents had when they didn't have phones to play with all day long, when they were not communicating in that way, like when they actually had to do in-person communication. That's really what I'm talking about, by the way. The lack of experience with in-person communication. People are becoming more socially isolated. In fact, I see this every time I step outside my home. Most people in my neighborhood don't even interact with each other. They just stay in their homes and they only leave when they want to go out for work or to the pool. There's very few instances where they are engaging in some kind of group activity or they're organizing anything that relates specifically to something happening in the apartment complex. Otherwise, they're just happy to live in their own space. They don't really engage or interact with any of the other neighbors except with brief moments or maybe a conversation or two, but then they just kind of go back to what they're doing, and that obviously means that our society is not engaging in the way that it used to. Things are changing. And I think with changing times comes a change in the kind of relationships people want based on their upbringing, the level of technology they're exposed to, and so on and so forth. The other reason why I think FLRs are doing so well and are rising is because they're providing less stress for the woman and for the male. And what do I mean by this? I remember growing up seeing my aunt Linda and her husband arguing pretty much all the time. Not every time I was around, but I heard that it was a constant problem. It made the children feel uncomfortable. I remember the looks on my cousins' faces, not being able to really process or handle very well their parents going at it like that. And if you were a divorced child, a child of a divorced parent, or you grew up seeing your family members screaming and yelling at each other, it's just kind of like, do you want that for your life? Do you really want it? And the easiest way to prevent arguments and heated discussions is to be in an FLR. I mean, it's one of the easiest relationships to be. In other words, the woman says what you need to do or how you need to follow, and then you lead and you obey the orders. It it creates less stress, less tension, and less drama. And I think that a lot of children, both men and women, grew up in these households where there was a lot of angry energy being projected outward from both the parents, or at least one of the parents. And a lot of that is due to the fact that the one or both of the people are incompatible with each other. And I also think FLRs are advantageous in other ways as well. Obviously, I can't do an entire video section on on how good FLRs are for both men and women. But I think that the fact that, because we're already living in a stressed out age, people are worried about global warming. They're worried about a third world war. They're worried about a one world totalitarian government. There are a lot of different, there's the word about the economy. There's a lot of different things that are stressing people out now that just wasn't stressing them out even 40 or 50 years ago. You know, the stress levels have obviously gone through the roof. We've seen a rise in mental illness. People are suffering more from depression, anxiety. I think women especially are taking more antidepressant medication. So if you're dealing with all this bullshit, all this stress, the last thing you want to do is add more of it into your personal life. And I think that that's why FLRs have evolved in popularity, because they cut out a lot of the stress and the anger and the tension that comes about as a result of arguments and disagreements and all these other heated discussions, like who's supposed to do what chore, who's supposed to do this or that. Like the constant power struggle type relationship. That just doesn't seem to be appealing to a lot of people in the 21st century. They don't, especially people in FLRs, they don't want that power struggle bullshit. They just want to do what they have to do and live their life. And it's just easier when you have a partner who is either leading you or you are the partner leading them. All this other stuff is just not, it's not helpful. It's not going to work long term. It's going to just add more and more and more. Most people, I feel, already have a full plate. Trying to think about what the other reasons could be for the FLRs. I think another thing about FLRs, the reason why they're rising, is because people have been marketing them successfully. I've seen authors writing books. I saw an author who wrote about FLRs. I think he only had like 700 or 800 followers on X. I looked back and he's got 5,000, and congratulations. I mean, that's exactly what is happening. Is they are, I think that the marketing, like when people hear about this stuff and they investigate it, I really believe that people look at it and go, wow, it has all these benefits. It does it can do all this for my life. And if you are a dominant woman, a submissive man, or if you're in some kind of other context and you see this, you're like, well, hey, maybe I should give this a try. Because even if it doesn't turn you on, it might be good for your disposition. It might be the best thing for you to focus on your education or to raise your children or to build your wealth or whatever. That might be what is contributing to the rise of FLRs. I could have missed it entirely. Does anybody else have any idea what is going on with FLRs? I haven't read as deeply into it as I have with Femdom content and Gynarchy. Those I'm far more familiar with. But FLRs are something that is, like, I heard about, that I think it is starting to become more and more well known. And I just think that it's a trend that we can only expect to continue in the culture. I hope everybody has a great day. Please take care out there. Bye.